Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with a very out-of-focus camera at the moment, which he's trying to sort your friendly neighborhood far-right thug, out-of-focused friendly neighborhood far-right thug, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we are all doing well. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, and night, wherever we are. Just trying to reposition it. There we are. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. So, it's actually a re-recording at the moment of an episode I recorded before. Wanted to go back over it. It wasn't very good, but there's a lot of important things that we need to talk about, and I want to go back and make it a little bit better. So hopefully this will be coming out with my very patchy beard at the moment. Very unkempt beard. There needs to be something done about it very, very soon. So, a couple of things to go over, ladies and gentlemen. We've had some historic changes at the moment. Historic things to talk about. Such as... But let's get started on a bit of good news. So, Poland recently had an election. And elections, as we know, in the Western world, in Europe, in America, in Britain, very, very precarious situations at the moment. Democracy increasingly being shown to be a sham in many instances, such as what's going on in Romania, where it's very likely that Moldovan and French election interference resulted in the globalist candidate winning, and as a result it wasn't the Romanian flag that was flown by the victor. No, it was the European Union flag, because of course it was. However, in Poland, the same thing did not happen. Mr. Karol Nawrocki, I hope I'm saying his name right, I certainly hope so, because he could certainly kick my ass, as you'll see now, ladies and gentlemen, got elected, I believe, as the president of Poland. Very, very positive result to talk about. Because, oh boy, you're going to see what kind of leader Poland has just decided to elect for itself. It was looking very dicey for a while, but I believe he quite convincingly won it in the end. Mr. Nawrocki, which I hope I'm saying the name right, I probably just refer to him as Mr. Karol from here on out, just because of my limited pronunciation skills, is a former heavyweight boxing champion. And let me just check, make sure I'm not anything. He's an anti-globalist Polish nationalist, and as I said, former heavyweight boxing champion. And this video was recently released. I've got it from the Visegrad page on X, Visegrad24. But this video was recently released. I want to show you in a moment the contrast between an elected leader, such as Mr. Nawrocki here, and what we have in the UK with our dear leader, Mr. Keir Starmer. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'll take you into watching this video now. And again, this is what could be, and then we're going to have a look at what we have. I'm here for all of it. So, for those of you who are listening, not watching, ladies and gentlemen, I'm letting the video again play in the background. This is so much toxic masculinity, quote unquote, and I am so here for it. So, you have, starting off, hitting the heavy bag and benching what appears to be at least one or two plates either side. It might be 80 kilos, might be 100 kilos, I'm not exactly sure. With ease, right? Bar touching the chest, no half reps on this man whatsoever. This makes a personal trainer very, very proud indeed. But look at this, right? Former heavyweight boxing champion. Look at the way he's hitting the bag in this section of the clip. Bang. I want you to remember that. I want you to remember this toxic masculinity. Hitting sternum. If you're not watching this, ladies and gentlemen, he's hitting in a dress shirt with the Rolex on, a dress formal long-sleeved shirt. This man is hitting sternum to bar pull-ups with ease. He looks like he's fucking levitating, let me tell you. I'd say this man's body fat, certainly I would imagine not over about 12 to 15%, and that's being very generous, I would imagine. He's very lean. He's very, very lean indeed. But again, chest to bar pull-ups in a formal dress shirt. All this toxic masculinity, I am so here for it. Strength, power, force, everything that embodies a good, principled man. No weakness. No weakness. On the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to flip over now and show you the same, but from our dear leader, Mr. Keir Starmer.
And just try and whack it. Yes, this is good. And again. That's it. And again. Try and breathe. Relax. That's it. Up, lift back up.
Oh, Jesus.
Try and whack it. Yes, this is good. Again. That's it. And again.
Jesus, man, this is just depressing. So, in case you're not watching again, ladies and gentlemen, in the most limp-wristed fashion possible, no stance, no poise, no power, no nothing. A child could hit harder than this man. He's struggling to hit just the basic Lonsdale heavy bag. So, for example, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop that travesty now. We've seen that enough. That is how it is, and just another little reminder that this is how it could. This is how it could be. God damn it. God damn it, man. Truly, truly, we are missing out. We are missing out. But congratulations to Poland. I think they made a very good choice. Wishing them nothing but the best. They are going to be a bastion, along with Hungary, along with some of the other nations that are not going along with the globalist migration pact, replacement migration, a part of the UN bullshit that's destroyed our nations in every way conceivable. Poland, Hungary, Viktor Orban, Karol Nawrocki, they're going to be shaping the future of Europe, I think, in my opinion. I think the rising candidates in areas like France, sadly, obviously, Marine Le Pen has suffered this fair share of lawfare herself, but I dare say she's not out of the fight yet. She will turn France around. In Germany as well, the AfD, I think they're going to start picking up steam after what's been allowed to happen in Germany as a result of the election that happened not too long ago, where they voted for more of the same for some stupid reason. And it will eventually come to Britain as well. Make no mistake, we have got light times ahead. It will be dark in the near future. Projections, for example, set white natives in Britain to be a minority in their own ancestral homeland as early as 2040, 2041. That gives us less than a generation to turn this tide around. That's going to involve not only systematic remigration processes, it's also going to involve us changing a lot of our societal attitudes as well, to becoming more pro-family, more pro-society, and that's ultimately going to be becoming more pro-tradition as well. That's going to be casting off the evils of things like feminism and that kind of ideology, getting rid of all the fads and going back to what we know works and worked for 2,000 plus years. Anyway, now, I mentioned before that this is going to be paving the way for people going forward, because more and more people are going to be seeing what's going on. This video that we're going to go through in a minute, ladies and gentlemen, should send a chill down your spine, should make you sick to your stomach, and make you viscerally angry if you're a European or if you're a Brit or if you are a Westerner in any meaningful sense. This should make you viscerally angry and fill you with a murderous rage. Okay, I'm not giving you condoners to act upon that, okay? That's not what I'm saying, that you should go out and want to murder people, but watching this should ignite that reaction that makes you want to exact vengeance on the people that you're going to see in a moment, because this is a truly, truly disgusting video that sources are conflicting with where I've seen this from. Some people have reported that this is in Austria. Some people have reported that this is in Germany. So either way, this is a European woman is the center point of this video, and there's a gang of Syrians around her. And the comments that these Syrians are making, ladies and gentlemen, as they are basically sexually assaulting her and making elusive remarks to even more heinous sexual assaults that take place with some of the remarks we'll see now, it is not leaving her alone. She's being harassed. She's being assaulted by this group of Syrians. And they basically say, she's yours now, referring to the group of friends that they're talking to. Let's take her. I've got you a gift. She's yours now. Let's take her to Raqqa. And Raqqa, ladies and gentlemen, refers to the ISIS stronghold, where it's been reported that thousands of Yazidis and Christian women have been entrapped in sexual enslavement by Muslim extremists. So this is what they're alluding to. They're alluding to much greater atrocities that these people revel and enjoy participating in. They get a euphoric rush from this perceived sexual conquest that these men are on in their own minds, and is being facilitated by our own attitudes and own treasonous governments, okay? And it is reaching a boiling point. This could be your daughter, ladies and gentlemen. This could be your sister. This could be your niece. And it has happened. A lot worse than this has happened, as we know, with potentially 1.2 million systematically trafficked, drugged, raped, tortured young, predominantly white British girls by, predominantly in our case, Pakistani Muslim rape gangs. That is an undeniable fact at this point, and it is manifesting all throughout Europe, as well as these disgusting foreigners are on this Islamic sexual conquest to spread the caliphate. Pardon me. It's our women that are suffering from our treasonous government, and in many instances our own lack of spines to stand up and speak against it. So this is that video now, ladies and gentlemen. Again, if this does not fill you with nothing less or anything less than a murderous rage, I do wonder what sort of meditation practice, what sort of medication you take in order to remain so filled with Zen. But honestly, there's serious problems at play if this does not seriously trouble you. So, gentlemen, here's that video coming to you now.
يا أخو سبعة قاضبة الله أكبر هاي أكبر هدية السلام عليكم طيب هاي شنو؟
خذ هاي هدية مني لك هاي عمل لك زفت الرويمن
يا أخو سبعة عالرقة 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 ولدنا ما صورته هو جاي يا أخو سبعة قاضبة.
So again, they're allegedly saying in this video, ladies and gentlemen, again, they're saying the standard Allahu Akbar, you know, God is greater, or you know, Allah is greater, whatever it is they're saying, right? Here's the point here. Literally picks her up, and this is a humiliation ritual for these women. This is a humiliation ritual for these women. These men, they're laughing and joking. They have no respect. They have no respect for this woman. They see her as less than nothing, okay? Women in Islam are already obviously massively viewed as second class and subservient to men. Anyway, in a lot of these areas where you see Islamic strongholds like Raqqa, for example, you know, the prison veil, the prison garments that they have to wear and stuff like that, so that the impulses of these barbaric men are not catered to. You know, you can't even go out showing a bit of ankle because that might stimulate unwanted sexual advances of some animalistic barbarian like these people, right? But this is where we're seeing now the fruits of multiculturalism, diversity. Well, you'd never see this on the streets of Poland. You'd never see this on the streets of Hungary. Poland and Hungary and places like that, where they've stood up to Islamic migration, especially as being forced by the EU Migration Pact and stuff like that, are shockingly safe. It's a reason why Rostodon, for example, wrote a song about fucking off and going over to Poland, literally to the tune of, I've forgotten the name of the song. I've never known the name of the song. It was, I let my guard down and then you pulled the rug. I was getting used to being someone you loved or something like that. It's to the tune of that song, right? He says, and I'm fucking off over to Poland where the streets are safe. You know, because this is the state of many cities and many areas of the UK, of Germany, of France, of Belgium, of Austria. All of these European countries that have opened their doors to jihad, as Trump has said, opened their doors to jihad. And America is finding out the fruits of this as well at the moment with the reactions that they're having at the moment. Like in Texas, for example, where Muslims in Texas were trying to build basically an entire Islamic conclave. No, I think it was like Epic City or something like that. And Amy Mack was sounding the alarm about it. They're learning about that now. They're learning about extremists like Ilhan Omar that married her brother in order to skirt around immigration law and to commit immigration fraud. And that we can only hope that she will be deported from America in the very near future. But this is the fruits that we're seeing here. These are your women, our women, that are being subjected to these humiliation rituals. If you've read some of the court transcripts from the grooming gangs, for example, with the heinous things that were done to these girls, not just rape we're talking about here. No, we're talking about torture. We're talking about the most depraved kind of sexual torture you can imagine. Talking pumps to expand these children's anal passages. We're talking broken bottles. We're talking branding as part of these humiliation rituals. This, as much as it should fill you with contempt for your government and a murderous rage, is very mild to some of the things that we've seen, but it's indicative of how these people think. And these people, being Syrians, for example, have no business being in these countries now whatsoever. They have no business being in ours. They have no business being in France, no business being in Germany, no business being in Belgium, no business being in Austria, no business being in any of them, especially now that the Assad regime has fallen. The Assad regime fell a little while ago. Surely that's going to usher in the new Islamic paradise, right? So all of these people should now be clamoring to go back home. Tells you a lot when a lot of these, I saw a troubling stat the other day where I think it was like 70% of so-called asylum seekers that were in Sweden have vacationed back to the countries that they fled from, or vacationed away from their nation of sanctuary, as the Welsh government would say. Yeah, truly, truly horrifying stuff. And this is the problem we have to wake up and face. This is the problem that German men have to wake up and face, because it's going to be on them. It's going to be on them to pay the price for this. They're going to need to fight these foreign invaders, possibly literally, possibly in a literal sense in the very near future. But not only that, they're going to have to be willing to fight their own government that are fighting tooth and nail to keep these people in our countries, because they want the additional power that it brings to them electorally, because they will vote for the government that allowed them to come in and engage in this rape jihad and this takeover, pardon me, of these countries. That is why they want to fight tooth and nail for the foreigner to keep them here, not for the native person, because they actually want the native person's vote to mean so little that they cannot vote themselves out of the situation anymore. They were forced into it. It was all by design, as Keir Starmer came out and said. It was all by design. It was not an accident, and it is designed so that the one-party state is never going to be able to be removed, at least electorally. At least electorally, because the native vote is not going to matter. When we are a minority in this land, that is the only land that we have, mind you, this is the only land that we have. When we are a minority in this land, if we allow it to be, as soon as 2040, our votes mean nothing. Our votes mean nothing because we can simply be outvoted. The minority, which will be us, will not have a voice. And it will be exactly as Deuteronomy 28, lays out. That's the word I was looking for, sorry. It will be exactly as Deuteronomy 28 lays out, where the foreigner will be the head and we will be the tail, where he will lend to us, we will not lend to him. We will betroth the wife and somebody else will sleep with her. Those kinds of things, right? Go and read Deuteronomy chapter 28 if you haven't done so already. Even if you're a devout atheist and stuff like that, just go and read it for how prophetic that passage of Deuteronomy turned out to be. Even if you hate the Jews. Even if you hate the Jews. You know, even if you hate the state of Israel, even if you hate the Jews, even if you hate Jewish scriptures and stuff like that, but go and read Deuteronomy chapter 28. I read it on one of the past episodes of the podcast, so you can go to skim to the end of that and find the chapter where I read it, okay? Find the section where I read it. It is so prophetic for what we are seeing now with multiculturalism. You get some people being like, oh yeah, but if everybody believed the same thing, society would be so boring. I'd be like, yeah, but you wouldn't have foreigners raping 1.2 million young girls. I think that's more important. I think that's more important. You wouldn't have the complete overthrow of your society. So you want about Poland and Hungary, that they're racist, they're this, they're that. At least they have a strong sense of nation. At least they have a strong sense of who they are as a people. They have a strong sense of culture, strong sense of faith, which we cannot say. We cannot say that we have, and there's largely to blame for our downfall. We can blame our government, we can blame whoever else we want, all the other people that shouldn't be here, but ultimately we have to acknowledge where we have gone wrong also. We have to acknowledge where we have gone wrong, our laissez-faire attitude with things that are a lot higher than us that we have allowed to fall by the wayside. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not unique to just one country in Europe. This is also in the wake of what happened in France recently. So what happened in France recently, and this is straight out of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is like something straight out of Sodom and Gomorrah, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to let this video play for you now in the wake of the riots that happened in France recently. Here we go. Truly the mark of a dying, falling society, where you have these young, presumably French girls, completely at the mercy of this band of disgusting foreigners, which I don't mind saying, who God knows what they would do if the women... Obviously, the window later on ended up getting shattered anyway. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I've just transitioned to the wrong one. The window ended up getting shattered later on in the clip, as you saw. Now, they weren't in the relative safety of the car. If they end up getting pulled out of this car and into this mob, they very likely would have been subjected to, I believe it's the Lara Logan treatment, which is Lara Logan, who was reporting out in Egypt. Her and her reporting crew were set upon by a massive gang of Egyptian Muslims, because obviously Egypt is a majority Muslim country now. And she was separated from her crew and basically kidnapped further and further into this band of people, and she was viciously sexually assaulted. Viciously sexually assaulted. One of the worst cases we've seen. One of the worst cases that's ever been seen. Truly something, as I said, out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you never heard that story before, if you've never heard of the story, for example, of Sodom and Gomorrah, it's a story from the book of Genesis in the Bible, in which God condemns two cities to destruction because of the depravity that they've allowed themselves to fall into. And it's truly a very, very sad story. There's a similar story that harkens back to it in the book of Judges as well. I can't remember the name of the city that gets the treatment in that one, but that's a story in the book of Judges where a group of residents of the society where this story takes place all descend on the house of somebody who I believe is either the judge or a relatively important individual, and in order to basically appease this mob that wants to break in and have unconsensual sexual relations with everybody inside, we're truly talking about, you know, again, disgusting depravity in regards to the story. Guy says, look, have my concubine, and sends his concubine out, and the Bible's very clear that she is viciously assaulted again, basically given the Lara Logan treatment all night. All night she is viciously assaulted and gang raped, basically. And then later on, when she's just left for dead outside, she ends up meeting, again, another aspect which makes her fate even worse in some ways. But again, truly disgusting stuff. In Sodom and Gomorrah, which I'm going to read for you the story now, is from Genesis 19. What happens is the two angels of the Lord came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot, who's the main pivotal person in this part of the story, he's related to Abraham, was sitting in the gate of Sodom, and when he saw them, he rose to meet them, bowed with his face to the earth. He said, "My lords, turn inside, I pray to you, to your servant's house, and spend the night and wash your feet, then you may rise up early and go on your way." They said, "No, we will spend the night in the street." So these are two angels of the Lord, and they come to Sodom because basically Abraham has pleaded with the Lord not to destroy Sodom, starting off with, I believe he can find 50 righteous people, then he whittles the Lord down to 40. Eventually he says, the Lord basically goes, if you can find 10 righteous people, I will haggle no more. If you can find 10 righteous people, I will not commit Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction. I will not devote them to destruction. So the angel of the Lord go in, and they initially say they're going to spend the night in the street. Lot urged them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered his house. He made them a feast, baked unleavened bread, and they ate. So, initially, two angels come. They say they're going to spend the night out in the street, and Lot says, "No, please come inside." Obviously, Lot knows why. As you would imagine, the angels know why as well. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all of the people to the last man surrounded the house, and they called to Lot, "Who are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." Now, if you're not familiar with Bible terminology, a lot of the times when the Bible uses this kind of language, that we may know somebody or that somebody knows someone, it means to have sexual relations, okay? So in this instance, when the men are saying, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them," saying, where are the men that came to you? Bring them out so that we can rape them, basically. That's what they're saying. This is the level of depravity that we're talking here with regards to Sodom. Lot went out of the door to the men and shut the door after him. Now, this is where Lot begins to plead with them. He says, "I beg you, my brothers, please do not act so wickedly." If you're looking for the translation, by the way, this is from the Revised Standard Version Catholic Edition, okay, the RSVCE. And it's chapter 9 of the book of Genesis, okay, if you want to go and look this up. As where Lot tries to plead with them, and to appease them, you can argue he does something very, very dishonorable indeed. He says, "Behold, I have 2 daughters who have not known man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." So in order to try and appease this group of men, this massive army of men that have come here to rape these 2 men who are angels of the Lord, Lot says, "Here, have my 2 daughters. Have my 2 daughters who have not known man." So again, not exactly a great thing to do, but again, it speaks to the depravity of this society. It speaks to the depravity of the society, and also to a bit of Lot's character, who, if you know a little bit about what happens to him later on, the story arc for Lot doesn't really go in a positive trajectory, and this is just the start. But they said, i.e. the mob, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came to sojourn, and he would play the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them." Then they pressed hard against the man Lot and drew near to break the door. So they're forcing him back. They're saying they're going to do worse to him than they would have done to the 2 angels of the Lord anyway. And they're trying to break the door. But what happened then is, this is the, if you can call it a good part of this story, is that the men put forth their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. They struck with blindness the men who were at the door of the house, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves groping for the door. So the angels of the Lord, in this instance, they afflicted the mob with blindness, and as a result, then they couldn't do exactly what they were planning to do. And they found themselves groping for the door. They couldn't even find it. And after this, then, Sodom and Gomorrah was promptly destroyed. So from verse 12, it says, "Then the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become so great before the Lord that the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, "Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city." He deemed his sons-in-laws to be jesting, but eventually they did leave. And basically, again, the Lord did, it says you rained down on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of those cities and what grew upon the ground. So this is a really, really horrifying story that speaks to many things, particularly with regards to sexual immorality and the depravity that comes when you don't follow the Lord, basically. And eventually what happens as a result of this. Now tell me that you do not see echoes of this story, ladies and gentlemen, when you watch this video again. You know, there may be no person that's standing there pleading with them, take my daughters, don't take the angels of the Lord, or stuff like that. But if you've read some biblical stories like Sodom and Gomorrah, like the story from the book of Judges that I mentioned, you know that this is the mark of an evil society where this has been allowed to happen. And that if anything, it is primed for destruction. It's just in this instance, it's destroying itself. You can argue the Lord doesn't exactly need to do much at the moment in order to destroy the society because it's too busy destroying itself. It's collapsing under the weight of its own depravity. Speaking of its own depravity, I need to think about the Canadian government and Western governments in this next clip, ladies and gentlemen, where our government at the moment are trying to pass some of the most pro-death laws we've ever seen. From trying to even more liberalize the laws on abortion that we already have, okay, which I believe up to about 28 weeks before that you can get an abortion without much reasoning, if I'm not mistaken. I believe you need some kind of reason, but after that you need some kind of reason, like threat to mother's life or something like that, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that when the cutoff is, but I know up to a certain point the laws are quite liberal in that instance. Now, not only are they trying, for example, one of the MPs, I believe, or MS is for Swansea or the Gower, Tonya Antianazzi, I think that's her name, is trying to legalise abortion up until birth. Okay, so she's trying to legalise abortion up until birth. But we also have some of the most pro-euthanasia, pro-state-sponsored murder pushing at the moment from people like Kim Leadbeater, and her allies. So, for example, Kim Leadbeater and her allies shot down some safeguards for some of her euthanasia laws where it would have prohibited them from talking to under 18-year-olds about euthanasia. It would have prohibited doctors from talking about euthanasia with people that didn't want it or didn't broach the subject to the doctor. Okay? So they're trying to do so many things to make people more accepting and make euthanasia far more wide sweeping and palatable and to be approached by doctors and healthcare personnel, okay? And this is encapsulated in this clip from Canada. So this lady, which you're going to see now, is a service veteran in Canada and also a para-athlete, okay? And eventually, with all the taxes she's presumably paid to the government and all the work that she's done to put her country on the world stage and all the work she's done for her country in her service and stuff like that, regardless of how I feel about women in certain positions of work and stuff like that, jobs that they shouldn't be allowed to do and all things like that, from my own personal reasoning, this woman has done a lot of good work for her country. There's no two ways about it by the looks. And she needed a wheelchair lift in her house, okay? She's approaching the government. The government kept her waiting on this for 6 years. A wheelchair lift in her house. Now, presumably, it's either a lift which her wheelchair goes onto so that she can transcend the floors, or some kind of stair lift that carries her up the stairs. I'm not sure what it means by wheelchair lift in her house here. But for 6 years, she was waiting on this. Eventually, she tells her government representative, I'm not sure I can carry on like this. This is having a massive effect on me. I'm feeling really down, feeling really depressed. I'm not sure I can go on like this. Straight away, they jump in and say, well, you have a right to die. Straight away, they jump in and tell her she has a right to die. So not, oh, okay, we'll speed that up for you so that your quality of life improves so that you can continue to have the best quality of life and health-related quality of life and most satisfying life up until your natural last breath as possible. No, would you like to kill yourself sooner? Would you just like to kill yourself? We need to make some room for an Afghani migrant to come in with his family and his 6 dependents or whatever. So, you know, if you can just kill yourself and we could take your house and give it to him, that'd be great. That'd be great. This is the attitude of the Canadian government. To somebody who served their country both on the national stage and in their service, this is truly, truly disgusting, ladies and gentlemen. Just think, if they can do this to somebody who served their country as much as this lady has, they can do it to anybody. They will do it to anybody, and everybody should be very, very concerned about it. Here's that video, ladies and gentlemen.
You're not going to give me the equipment we need to live, but you're just going to help us die? Like, what is this? I served 10 years with Canadian Armed Forces and then 10 years as a para-athlete for Canada. And as I am waiting for medical equipment and an elevator for my house to be able to transfer, it's been over 6 years now. It's still not there. And the agent treating my file told me one day when I told him on the phone that I just couldn't go on anymore. It was just, unbearable, and it's just too hard. And he told me, if you really think you cannot keep going on and you find it's too hard, you have the right to die. So there I am fighting all this time to trying to just get the proper equipment to just want to be able to live a life with the minimal of autonomy and independence. I understand I have still all these limitations, but it's ridiculous because from the states of things, I could probably be dead in 2 weeks.
Awful. Awful. Now, there's a little bit more to discuss with regards to this video in a minute, ladies and gentlemen, but how heartless, how disgustingly heartless and ideologically corrupted, ideologically bent towards this globalist agenda do you have to be? So this person, who again spent 10 years in the services, has been a para-athlete and just simply wants the bare minimum to allow her to keep some measure of autonomy and independence in her home. They kept her waiting 6 years. I guarantee you, if this was a family that they were trying to appeal to because of their election demographic that they're choosing to appeal to because of their ideological bent, they would not keep them waiting 6 fucking years. Guarantee you. And they would certainly, as soon as they show any sign of mental health decline, would not offer them medical assistance in dying. No, they're only doing this for native Canadian citizens they want to off and depopulate anyway. This is truly, truly disgusting stuff. This is what happens when you lose things like objective morality and sanctity of life and those kinds of things. This is what inevitably it leads to. I know people call the slippery slope a fallacy. We're seeing a lot of slippery slopes at the moment. We're seeing a lot of slippery slopes from like the normalization of things like gay marriage and what people do in the comfort of their own home and what they consent to and stuff like that, and how they then maliciously targeted the children in schools and stuff like that. It's a very, very slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen, from that down to normalizing paedophilia and child sexualization. It's a very, very slippery slope from allowing people to have whatever term you want to use and lovely terms, quote unquote, like dignity in dying and stuff like that, and you want them to have the choice, and then saying, oh yeah, well, we can just kill you if you don't feel so good about life anymore. Slippery slopes are there to see, ladies and gentlemen. They're becoming more and more apparent every single day. I struggle to see how we still call this a fallacy. It's just reality at this point.
But yet, they chose to not give us the tools and the opportunity to be able to live for over 6 years just for a wheelchair elevator.
It's fucking disgusting, man.
It is a bit ridiculous.
Can you talk a bit about how it made you feel when that government worker said to you you had the right to die?
I was shocked. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe that you just said that. And like I told them then, I can't believe you're not going to give me the equipment we need to live, but you're just going to help us die? Like, what is this?
Honestly, you're not gonna give me the equipment to help me live. You're just gonna help us die. That is your elected representatives, ladies and gentlemen. Those are your elected representatives, the people that we quote unquote elect to serve our interests, to make sure they act in the benefit of us as citizens. Remember, these people are public servants. These people are public servants. Never ever forget that, ladies and gentlemen. And then they're serving now, they're globalist paymasters, and that means that they are now incentivizing offing yourself whenever is convenient for them, really, so that they don't have to spend money. It's getting to the point now in the UK, for example, where it's really getting to the point of kill yourself to protect the NHS. That's where it's getting to. We'll save money by people killing themselves instead of having to put them through palliative care and trying to actually save their lives and all things like that. What happened to do no harm? What happened to do no harm? That's my question. What happened to do no harm? But that's exactly what happens when you lose grip on things like objective morality, on sanctity of life, and ultimately the only way you can have those is if something exists as a structure greater than humans themselves, than humans and their fickle preferences. It's the only way you can have things that don't result in a system like this is what it will inevitably lead to. Because ultimately, when you eliminate God, you replace it with government, or you replace it with the next thing to come along that basically serves the same purpose as God once did. So we really need to address that. And that results in everybody having to address it on a personal level, and having to maybe admit some things that they never wanted to, for whatever reason that they decided to cast off God in the first place. Speaking of that, obviously we're in the early stages of Sodom and Gomorrah Awareness Month, also known as Pride Month. But not related to that, mentioned before in that instance where I said that there's certain jobs that women should not be allowed to do. Now, I think there's several. I was talking with somebody a good few years ago when the British government first made the announcement that they were going to start allowing women into the special forces. I was talking with somebody that was in the Navy at the time. And he said that he was against it. And I was just asking him why, not taking any side, because I was more so on the side that, no, I don't think this is okay. I wouldn't be comfortable with this. In the sense of, and it was very much what he echoed, is that he was one of the people, he didn't think that, women couldn't do it or anything like that. Or there's not a certain woman that couldn't pass like special forces training and all things like that, right? It wasn't the fact that they couldn't do it. It was that with the type of engagements that they go on, and that if they were to be captured by the enemy, if they were to be held as a prisoner of war or some kind of prisoner, there's a lot more things that could be done to them that are very, very damaging to them at a personal level. That, as we saw in the clip of the Syrians, for example, these people that often they go to fight or to perform operations to target will delight in doing that kind of thing. We saw that, for example, on October the 7th. We've seen instances of that happening against civilians, for example, when the Soviet Union were marching their way towards Berlin in the 1940s in World War II, when they were making their advances. The atrocities that took place at the hands of the Soviet Union against German civilian women were disgusting. These atrocities do happen. The fact of the matter is there are a lot more things that can be done to women, because women are a lot more emotionally driven as well, will have a lot more of a noticeable effect on them and their state of mind than would a man. And typically, these people, take, for example, Hamas, who delighted in doing what they did on October the 7th to Israeli women and stuff like that. They will not only do it as a weapon, they will do it because they enjoy it. That's the kind of stuff that you're dealing with. And that was his reasoning behind, because there's so many disgusting, depraved, evil things that can be done to women that can't be so easily done to men. He was dead against it. And I fully agreed with him. And there's other jobs that they shouldn't be able to do as well, such as being prison guards in, the question remains whether they should be prison guards in a female prison. But again, there's issues there, because you can make the argument, should men be guards in female prisons and stuff like that. There's certainly a conversation to be had there, because there's certainly more avenues there for abuses of power on the part of men against female prisoners and stuff like that. With women being so emotionally driven, you cannot have them in positions where they're trying to control men. That's why I'm against women being police officers, in my personal opinion, for example, and certainly male prison guards, as is the case here with a lady known as Tracy Boateng. Tracy Boateng. Yep, Tracy Boateng. She was a prison guard at HMP Pentonville, and she is one of many female prison guards that have engaged in intimate relations with an inmate. It's unclear as to whether it was more than one inmate, but she was engaged in an intimate relationship with Vincent Ojo, who's in jail for drug dealing. So potentially drug dealing, very likely that these drugs are going to be making their way into the hands of, children, young teenagers, but whoever they're making their hands into, absolutely ruining their lives, ruining families, ruining people's finances, getting them hooked on things, creating a recurring customer for the business because they're stuck on the addiction, they're stuck on the vice, and it's ruining their fucking life in every single way. It's ruining their family, tearing their family apart, making, dads into absolute, invertebrate is the only word I can think of is coming to mind at the moment, men that are failing their children It's kind of stuff that Vincent here was involved in purely for profit. And not only was she engaged in an intimate affair with him, she even allegedly shared secure data with him, yet in the two-tier justice system that we have in this country, because likely she is from Ghana, she walked free from court. She suffered no legal penalty, as far as I know. But people were asking in the comments, why the hell are women guarding male prisoners? Now, I'm going to show you this image on screen, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tracy Boateng and Vincent Ojo. Tracy on the left, Vincent on the right. As you can see in this image, ladies and gentlemen, Vincent seems to be quite a large man, quite a large, physically imposing man, okay? Now, do tell me, if he was one of many, say, male inmates that decided to start a riot or they got into a fight and Tracy was the only one on the floor, it would only be the thing that stops that fight is the unspoken code of, you know, honor, if you want to put it that way, that often men will feel towards women that they don't physically assault them. Now, the rise of feminism and stuff like that, and women say they want to be treated like men and they've cast off the duties of being women, you could make the case and saying, for example, well, if women want to be treated like men, treat them like men. I'm not endorsing that view, but I understand people that feel that way. To be like, why do we have to uphold our end of like the chivalry and, you know, being this way around women, not doing all these things, but then you guys aren't going to uphold the womanly end of the bargain, so to speak. And in many instances, you outright demean men, you're in conflict with men, deliberately you provoke men in many instances, and then be shocked when a man reacts and slaps you or punches you or something like that. When you said all the time, you know, we are better than, we are just as good as the men, we are better than the men, logical endpoint of feminism, we are the men, and that's where you get the whole trans debacle. But point being, is because women are so emotionally driven, all it takes is somebody like Vincent to say the right things, be the smooth operator, be the silver-tongued, you know, cat, and instantly then he's in her pants. You know what I mean? Not only that, he's in the jail system and he's got secure data on, who knows, it could be prisoner files, it could be release notes, it could, whatever it could be. Okay, I'm not a prison officer, I don't know exactly what goes on in that sense, but shouldn't be, secure information should not be shared with inmates like this. But again, you should not have females trying to police men simply because they would not be able to hold their ground with most men. Because men and women are different, as much as feminism will try to tell you that men and women are just interchangeable cogs. You know, there's, you know, gender roles don't matter, all of these things. As much as people will try and push that message, you get clear examples, reality smacks you in the face, you get clear examples that we're not. Now, are men immune from sexual immorality and things like this, whether it be with other men or with women? No, absolutely not. And that's why men need to have a good look in the fucking mirror as well, such as the next case with HMP Lindholme governor, Mr. Rob Kellet, who was caught coming out of a brothel in Sheffield. So Rob Kellet is the governor of a failing prison. Again, a lot of these things are going wrong with prisons. Maybe because they're failing so bad with their governance and with their guards, that's why the Muslims just come in and run it. Maybe they can run it better. I'm joking and being facetious there, obviously. But in HMP Lindholme in South Yorkshire, that's the prison he's in charge of. But here he is caught leaving a brothel in Sheffield, 100% confirmed it is him. HMP Lindholme has a massive drug problem. For example, 40% of prisoners are randomly tested and come back for banned substances. So nearly half of the prisoners that are randomly tested come back for banned substances. And how are they getting these substances, you might ask? Well, there's a couple of different avenues, ladies and gentlemen. So prisoners can buy any drugs they wanted inside HMP Lindholme, for example. There's just, you know, with the contraband and with the lax security, with the immorality that comes right from the governor of the prison, they can just do whatever they want. They're basically running the prison. The latest Ofsted report said that it was lacking leadership to tackle the drug problem inside the prison. But then you also, for example, have the case of a mental health worker known as Amy Hatfield. Amy Hatfield, who, when HMP Lindholme Governor Rob Kellet was in charge, she flooded the jail with drugs, knives and mobile phones after she had a sexual relationship with an inmate. And 7 inmates ended up dying after taking the spice that she brought into the jail. And the person who posted this, he needs to be investigated in his phone checking, he's a dirty wrong. And yes, absolutely, completely agree. But here, for example, I'm going to play this video on mute, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a bit of music in the background that I got a feeling could get this video taken down off YouTube. Here is Rob Kellet, HMP Lindholme governor, coming out of a brothel in Sheffield. Seedy man. Seedy man indeed. So those of you who are... Oh, didn't play. Sorry, guys. No. For some reason, they didn't play the video. There we are. So here it is coming out of the brothel now, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a nondescript building in just a random, what appears to be like a high street. And you can see, if you have a look on screen, if you haven't done so already, ladies and gentlemen, that, again, this is him coming out. And you can see it's not well, publicized. Again, these places are not exactly going to be well publicized. You're not going to see billboards for this kind of stuff in most areas of the country, right? Because, again, most people do still have a kind of little social stigma towards it. Here he is. Here he is, emerging in the daylight hours from this doorway with GF and a backwards E on the top of it. But again, you'd walk past this in the high street, ladies and gentlemen, you wouldn't think anything of it. You've got one shutter for what appears to be one shop one side, one shutter for one shop that appears to be the other side, and then you've got, oh, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, you've got this, there we are. You've got this, I'm still getting used to transitioning between some of the scenes when I want to show things, guys. Apologies about that. But you have this shuttered area where, again, it's not marked in any way, XXX here or anything like that. So again, underground seeming business in Sheffield that this seedy man, Rob Kellet, is coming out of and got caught red-handed. So again, this goes back all the way to the Sodom and Gomorrah sexual immorality stories. This is what it goes back to at the end of the day. This is people, allowing them to come to the mercy of their own vices and not doing the virtuous things when they know they should. And in this instance, for example, it not only results in like the sexual objectification of women that are often, taken into human trafficking and stuff like that, that this man is, by engagement with the brothel enterprise is possibly involved in by being a patron. You also have Amy Hatfield, who likely overlooked the drugs, knives, and mobile phones that she was bringing in as a result of having a sexual affair with an inmate. So again, all it takes in most instances is for a silver-tongued fiend to say the right thing, and, people will just do whatever the hell he wants. He will just do whatever the hell he wants, especially if he just happens to be good in the sack. So this is now moving on to the last bits of today, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the marks of a dying society. Keep that Sodom and Gomorrah story in mind as you read this, ladies and gentlemen. So this is something that the Lib Dems posted on X on the start of Sodom and Gomorrah Awareness Month, also known as Pride Month, also known as June. And it says, it's Pride Month 2025. Wherever you are, we hope you have a safe one. People have been rightly asking what you mean when we say at Lib Dems need to, quote, do better or, quote, step up as a party. There's no such thing as, quote, done, of course. But this is what we're pushing for at the moment. I'm going to throw it up on screen for you, ladies and gentlemen. And if you have a look on screen now, you'll see that it says, what does better look like? And what the Lib Dems want to do, possibly the most extreme policies that I've seen on this, in complete violation, complete flagrant violation of the policies laid out by the UK Supreme Court, where they ratified the definition of woman as an adult human female, male as an adult human male, man as an adult human male, and so on. Revise the Equality Act to protect trans plus and disabled rights, protect bodily and medical autonomy for all. Presumably that means, again, even more liberalizing the already so liberal abortion laws. Recognize non-binary, agender, and intersex folks whom are already recognized, ladies and gentlemen, by virtue of them having a medical condition that is an abnormality from what we would expect to see with regards to regular sexual binary, but usually just with a medical procedure when necessary. These people will naturally fall into one or two of the sexual binary categories. So recognizing this non-binary and agender is just something that is the absence of gender, quote unquote. So then I ask you, what are you? What are you? Again, you're trying to claim all these rights and stuff like that, but if you're not one of the two sexes, you're not one of the two sexual categories, or at least you're part of the abnormality of intersex that later on you'll fall into one or the other, then what are you? Are you a human? Then how can you claim to have human rights and all of this stuff, right? And obviously we know non-binary is just completely mythical. Codify trans-inclusive meanings of man and woman in law as originally intended. So again, they're basically tacitly admitting here that this was to completely overthrow reality. This Equality Act was to completely overthrow reality in the eyes of the Lib Dems. And again, that basically means they're going to take man and woman to mean absolutely nothing, because you've got to take into account, ladies and gentlemen, if something can mean something and then the opposite of that something, then what the hell does the word mean? What the hell does the word mean? For example, if man can mean man and woman, or man and not man, then what the hell business do we have with using the word man? Because it literally means nothing. It's why, for example, the lunacy with regarding the left's view on being a woman, and why they say a woman is anybody that identifies as a woman and it can be whatever people want it to be, that literally is them admitting it, even though they're not intelligent enough to realize it, that the word woman means nothing. The word woman in their eyes means nothing other than it being a disgusting oppressor term relating to female roles and family and patriarchy and all stuff like that, and they feel they need to overthrow. But point being is that when something can have so many different meanings, eventually you get to the point where the meaning of the word is so diluted because it can mean so many different things that it doesn't mean anything anymore. It doesn't mean anything anymore. And that's what they tried to do with woman. And that's why people were seeing the lunacy of it straight on, because people were saying, like, protect women's rights, trans rights are human rights, trans women are women. Well, that's basically them saying men are women. And that's literally them saying A is not A, or A is the inverse of A, or B is the inverse of B. You know? Just cannot be. It just cannot be. But again, this is the level of ideological bent that we see on the very, very fringe left of the Lib Dems. I can imagine that this position is going to get only more unpopular as we go forward. I certainly hope so, because children have been irreparably harmed in the pursuit of this ideology, losing their sexual function, having their growth stunted. Truly, truly awful stuff. Crimes against humanity, we're talking here. Level of, like, eugenics, we're talking. So again, ladies and gentlemen, putting it up on screen for you now, they also say demedicalize the GRC process, enshrine self-ID in law as it is in Ireland. That would basically probably make it illegal for you to, quote-unquote, misgender someone, which basically, again, is making it illegal to say the truth. These people just want to make it illegal to say the truth because the truth for them is very, very inconvenient. They want to scrap the ban on puberty blockers, so they want to give kids the ability to chemically castrate themselves. And if you have a look at the point underneath it, ladies and gentlemen, they want to then scrap plans for chemical castration. So not only can you not scrap the ban on puberty blockers and then scrap plans for chemical castration, because one is inherently the other. If you're giving a kid puberty blockers, you are chemically castrating them by nature of what you're giving them, and you are stunting their natural development because you're removing things like androgens from their system. You're stunting their development in an irreparable fashion by chemically castrating them to reduce things like testosterone and, again, those naturally circulating androgen levels. But then they say they want to scrap plans for chemical castration. Now, the only other candidates for chemical castration, other than these vulnerable children that are going to be making their way through the medical system, quote-unquote medical system, the eugenics medical system, is, or rather are, sex offenders and pedophiles, that this is their punishment. So, in theory, the Lib Dems, if their policy pamphlet here is to be believed, they want to chemically castrate young, vulnerable, innocent children, and they want to not chemically castrate evil, degenerate, disgusting pedophiles. That is Lib Dem policy with regards to the Equality Act and with regards to the trans agenda and the LGBT LMNOP agenda, right? That is what they want to do. They want to chemically castrate your young, innocent 12-year-old and cut off her breasts and stuff like that, and incentivize the men to cut off their penises and have this hole stitched into their system, which is a fake vagina that keeps trying to close up, and they've got to keep dilating it, and this awful stuff, right? And then they want to not have that punishment for disgusting, degenerate pedophiles and sex offenders. That is Lib Dem policy. If you're thinking of voting for the Lib Dems, that is what you are voting for. That makes you a disgusting, degenerate person. And they also then want to ensure same-sex access to IVF treatment, which is one of the biggest evils of our time, with the amount of fertilized embryos that it ends up destroying as a result of people basically going in and factory farming babies, if you want to think about it that way, factory producing babies as if they're a commodity, just because they want to try and skirt around the natural way that babies are created. It's truly, truly disgusting and evil. And then protect LGBT plus expression in public life. So again, protecting things like pride parades, protecting things, the degeneracy that is exposed to children, likely, again, enshrining it into the school system, very, very likely. This is possibly the most degenerate policy on this that I have seen. If you're thinking of voting for it, you certainly need to have your head examined. Another people we had to have their heads examined are people that think this is in any way okay. And this is the mark, really a mark of a truly dying society. So Peter McCormack posted this on X recently, ladies and gentlemen. It says, more signs of UK decline. I went into a local Sainsbury's. Now, when you take meat off the rack, it triggers a loud alarm. I'm not sure where this exactly is. This is in England. And he's not lying, ladies and gentlemen. He took a video of this. And he spoke to the girl that worked there. He said there's so many shoplifters and they target meat and chocolates and then sell it on Facebook. So now they have a large siren when something is taken off the shelf. Now, before we had the richness of diversity and multiculturalism, we didn't need alarms in supermarkets when just regular people wanted to go in and pick up their meat. And can you imagine, is a euphemism in there somewhere, can you just imagine how many times the workers there, if they're working like an 8-hour shift during the day, especially during if they're like on an afternoon shift when you have peak time, people coming in from work and doing their weekly shop, or, you know, just coming in and doing the shop after they finish work, if they do it, you know, every day because they just buy little and every day for some reason. Just imagine how many times you're going to be hearing this mind-numbing sound coming from these aisles every single day, day in and day out, just because your government won't do what's necessary to police the law to stop people from committing these disgusting crimes and making us all worse off. So then what happens? They get shoplifted, they sell them on Facebook for a profit. Oh, what happens? Well, companies are not making as much. I know, again, a lot of these companies are, you know, not our friends either with their own ideological corruption. I get that. But what will naturally happen then is their prices will go up. Because their overhead is being affected by crime, they're going to naturally put the prices up to recoup their losses. So then who ends up paying the de facto tax on these goods and services? It ends up being just the regular non-crime committing persons. You have to wonder what the incentive is at this point not to commit crime. You have to wonder what the incentive is at this point not to commit crime. We know if you're a white native in the UK, you'll go to prison for pretty much anything. You'll go to prison for breathing wrong. Obviously, if you're not a white UK native, you pretty much get away with everything. But then what is the solution? For example, big blaring alarms where they're not needed. Not, of course, actually prosecuting the criminals and doing something about it and making sure that this problem does not happen in the future. But the Labour government's not going to do that. The Conservatives are not going to do what's necessary. I'm waiting to see if there's still a political alternative that is going to do it. But anyway, here's that video for you, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Listen. Huge alarm going off because poor old Peter McCormack, bless me, poor old Peter McCormack wanted to take just a nice ribeye steak off the shelf, which, if I'm right in saying, can we just talk about this 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen? Can we just talk? Does he zoom? Let me get a little bit closer. This one, what appears to be a ribeye steak in Sainsbury's, nearly £10. £10, what it appears to be. What lunacy is this? What are we doing? What are we doing? When I recorded this before, I didn't even see this before. Now I'm even more angry. The fact that this got so much, where just steaks now cost nearly £10 what? Per unit, per like 8-ounce steak or something like that. That is disgusting. That is disgusting. There is no justification for that whatsoever. But obviously it's happening because our own government won't do what's necessary to police the law. And obviously the incentive is that they don't want to eat their steaks anymore. No, they want all the steaks and lovely cow's meat for themselves, right? No, they want us to eat the bugs, the crickets, the GMO stuff, right? That's what they want us to eat. Because that's what they're trying to bring. How long do you reckon before we stop seeing ribeyes on... we stop seeing ribeyes, we start seeing ribbits. You know, we start seeing frogs, we start seeing crickets, we start seeing cockroaches and all these things instead of our lovely steaks and chicken and stuff like that on store shelves. Not only because they've been taken away because of climate change and stuff like that, but because people just can't afford them anymore. People just can't afford them anymore because they're paying £9.75 for a goddamn steak. For one goddamn steak. It'll be gone in about 5 minutes. That is disgusting. I think that's the worst thing about this video. That even potentially worse than the siren that goes off potentially tens of thousands of times a day and is mind-numbing, which is completely preventable and unnecessary, and that taxpayers likely had to foot in some way anyway, with the de facto tax they have to now pay on their goods because everything's so expensive. Not even the siren, but again, the fact that people will now look at a steak that's £9.75. for no necessarily better quality than what they had before, where maybe they were paying £5 or something like that, and just think that there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. It's just the way things are. We'll put it this way, ladies and gentlemen, like the bit that we saw all the way at the start with the difference between Keir Starmer and Mr. Karol Nawrocki. Again, allow me to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, and this will be our final note for today. We're going to harken back to exactly where we left off. Reminder of what is and what could be. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what is.
And just try and whack it. Yes, this is good. And again. That's it. And again. Try and breathe. Relax. That's it. And just try and whack it. Yes.
And now, before I leave you, or what I'm going to leave you with, is what could be. A nice reminder shown to us by what I'd like to still think are our friends over in Poland. What could be. And I'll leave you here for today. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Hwyl fawr. And I will see you again very soon. Godspeed.
Yeah.